I'm Detective Ernest Stoudemire of the Lake Welt Police Department. I'm also the designated chaplain. And I also was chosen to eulogize one of my best friends, Chief John A. Busby of the Lake Welt Police Department. And as I come before you this morning, I'm not coming with fabrication, pretending, or what have you, because I truly felt that as far as John and I are concerned, I gave John his flower where he lived. So I have no reason to come before you this afternoon to fabricate or institute something that is unreal or untrue. I can truly stand here this morning and tell you about a great man that has fallen. A man that was a friend not only to me, but a friend of many others. A lot of us may anticipate that the gathering that you see here this morning may be tradition, customary, or however you want to refer to it. But I can tell you that John Busby had a lot of friends, not only in this community, but John had a lot of friends throughout the United States. Oftentimes I have sat and talked with him about some of his friends and some of the acquaintances that he's met during the years. And he always established a high priority among men of his own peers, men of their own integrity, or whatever your belief may have been. That was John A. Busby. But let me just kind of give you a basic synopsis of John. John was a person that I met back in 1972 when I first became a police officer here in the city of Lake Wales. At this particular time, Chief Busby was a lieutenant with the Lake Wales Police Department. But during that time, John always was eager to help whoever he could help. He always was very concerned. He was a Navy guy. He used to constantly tell me about his stunts in the Navy, and I used to parallel it with my stunt in the Army. And we always were slaying things back and forth to one another. But in all our engagement and all our talking, his whole conversation was basically telling me that you should stress and you should push for excellence. He was telling me that no person should accept anything other than the best. This was John's philosophy of life. And I have to remind you once again, it may sound like this is a planned speech that I'm giving you, but I'm telling you how I knew John A. Busby, good friend of mine. He was a good administrator. I read in the paper one referred to him as the institution, and I have to agree. John was a man that before he made decision, he made sure that he had analyzed it in every way possible. I used to dread working a major crime and when John Busby was coming around, because I knew I don't care how you prepare, how you went over this case by case or whatever, he always had some question that he was going to be able to ask you that you weren't going to be able to answer. We always had a little saying back in the Detective Bureau, you get by the first 5, you haven't done anything. Because he was a thorough person. He was a sincere person. He was a person that believed in giving every citizen in this community exactly what his tax dollars paid for. He didn't believe in us loafing on the job. He didn't believe us being slouch. He believed in us being professionals at every level. And another thing that I can say about him, John always required us to, regardless who the citizen may be in this community, if he had a complaint, whether it was valid or invalid, he would have it investigated. We used to moan and groan behind those things on many occasions because we couldn't see why it was necessary, a person of that character or whatever, why was it necessary for us to investigate a complaint that he was complaining about, knowing all the time was fabrication. He said, well, go check it out anyway and get back with me. But that's how thorough John Busby was. John was a dedicated man. He was a trustworthy man. He was someone, if he told you something, you could count on him. He wasn't going to turn and leave you. He was an administrator that would stand behind you 100%. If you're wrong, he would tell you you was wrong. If you was right, he would tell you you was right. Because that's the way John Busby lived. And John's life was totally consisted of these type of things. This was his attitude. Even when it came down to education, John was very instrumental in pushing me and driving me to get a degree in criminology. He was the driving force. When I first met him, he was going to Polk Community College. And at that time, he was pursuing a degree, an AA degree. But John completed his AA degree in Polk Community College. Then he went on to St. Leo, where he got his bachelor's degree. From there, he went to the FBI Academy. Everywhere John went to any educational institution, he would accept nothing but excellence. He graduated top of the class at St. Leo in criminology. He graduated with honors from Polk Community College. And he preserved those same standards at the FBI Academy. And John was one of the elites among the elites. John was a dedicated man. He was an organization man. He was a community man. He was a society man. He was a family man. I can stand before you and give you all these synopses of John this afternoon because I'm telling you the truth. And any of you that knew John Busby, you know he was a friend among friends. And you always could depend on that. And John believed in you exceeded. He believed in inspiration. He believed in if you had an infirmity or a weakness somewhere along the way, he didn't believe you just casting it away, throwing it aside. John believed in you take all weakness and use it for strength. That you go to him. You could go to John and say, John, we got a man that is nothing but dead wood in this police department. Why don't you make some adjustment? Why don't something be done with this guy? And he said, well, Stat, you know, you take the expertise that you have and a little bit the other one have or whatever, you can take all that and put it together and you could bring that man up above standards. I never thought of it that way, but it makes a lot of sense. Rather than worrying about cutting off this branch that may be dying or may be weak or whatever, why not gather around and be a nucleus in the strength for this weakness, and maybe you could build it up to a standard where it'd be susceptible to society. But that's the way John Busby was. John was a sincere person. He was a person that could handle adversity. When adversity come, he didn't run. He would stand firm. A lot of times I would say, well, Chief, I don't see how you're able to handle this, that, and the other. He's, well, Stoudemire, I tell you. He said, you know, when you get to be chief of police, he says, there's nowhere else you can go. You got to stand up and fight. This is the way it is about life, period. You can't run from adversity when it come upon you in this life. You got to stand up and you fight. And I can say that by John A. Busby, that he was a fighter from his heart. I can say John was a role model that everybody in this community, abroad or whatever, should try to pattern themselves after him in one way or the other. Whether it be a father, whether it be a granddaddy, or whether it be a son. He was a role model in this community. And his attributes didn't only just stop here. His attributes carried on and on as far as you could go. Even out in Oklahoma, he had friends. He had friends in basically all parts of the United States. He had people that he could call for certain things, certain occasions that would come up. And I always liked that about him because, you know, when you go and you sit down and you talk with him, he always had an answer for everything. And he was the type of person that would not get in a hurry to answer your question. You can go to him in all sincerity about a problem or a situation that you have, and he's, well, I'll tell you what, you get back with me. And what he mean, I'm going to analyze the situation. I'm going to study it. I'm going to check the positive and the negative. I'm going to check the pros and the cons of it. Then when I come back and give you an answer, I'm going to give you an answer you'll be able to live with, and I'll be able to justify it. He loved the word justification and priority. Those are his strictly vocabulary. And you better believe me, as been working for him for a little over 10 years as chief of police, I learned to get my priorities straight. I learned justification. Because if you went to him with a complaint, the first thing he wants to see is documentation. If you don't have documentation, he figure you don't have a valid complaint. I used to not be able to understand that. But now I can understand exactly what he was talking about. If you got a complaint against me, you should be able to justify it one way or the other through documentation. If you don't have documentation, a strong indication, maybe I've done something wrong to you once. But if you got documentation, you can show the consistency of it. And this is what he was basically concerned about. And John rose to the top of his profession. John started off just like any other recruit would start off in the police department. But John was determined to make it to the very top. Talked with one of the investigators the other day. He said that he can remember as a rookie officer, he was riding with John Busby one day, and said Busby looked at him and kind of smiled and said, you know, one day I'm going to be the chief of police here. And I imagine the officers probably taking that as a grain of salt. But we know as of today that John Busby rose to the top of his profession, that he became the police chief. And John was not only the police chief, John was a great police chief. John brought about professionalism in the Lake Wells Police Department. He instituted the computers. He instituted all the finer things that you're seeing in the Lake Worth Police Department today. These are the things that he pushed for. And I can remember the last thing that should be a landmark from here to now on was he pushed for a new police building. You know, he went against a lot of adversity when it came down to the police building. But his thing was that he felt that Lake Worth was growing to the extent that it needed a better roof over their heads. And he would sit down, he would analyze these things. He had all kind of ideas and how to go about instituting a police department. And this was long before it ever got into the drawing stage or whatever. But he would sit down and go over these things. And I can remember coming in his office, talking to him on certain occasions, and he would show me certain things of what he want to have in it, this, that, and the other. But you know what I'm wishing and hoping in this community? What I'm talking to some of my constituents, some of the city elites, that when this police department is ever constructed, ever finished, that we should take it upon ourselves as citizens of this community, and somewhere around or near on this building, after it's constructed, should find the name Cobbler John A. Busby. And I think John family should be able to ride by that building one day and look at it and say, this is the building that John built. And in my closing, I would just like to say that I know that John has peace. I know John is a saved man. And I know that I can say to the family that you don't have to worry about John. His vacancy is going to be missed. It's going to be void and emptiness. But you just remember that John gone home to be with the Lord. What other journey can we look forward to other than going and being with Christ Jesus? This is our everyday goal down here on this earth. That as we set up our timbers every day, that we want to build a home and have a home on high where we can go and have eternal life. John Busby didn't die the other day. John Busby lived. You have to die to come to Christ. But John will live forever. And to his family, be proud. Stand high. Look tall. Because you got a role model here that everybody should want to be like someday. Because John has left a trademark. He has carved an image in this community that set a standard above all. I just wished I had part of the fortification that John has. I can remember the time when he contacted the disease and down through the years as it advanced into the state that it's in now, that John Busby was come to work. He would work just as fervently as he always did. A lot of days he was in agony, he was in pain, but he carried on his duty. If John was able to be there, he would be there. There are many days against the wishes of his doctors, but John was right there. He was dedicated. He was an honest man. That's what I like about John A. Busby. A man that everybody in this community should be proud of today, to have someone of that caliber from this community.